Welcome to Motherhood, Aligned and Assigned, where we help guide mothers from symptoms to solutions.
We're Dr. Serena Kaufman and Dr. Veronica Schultz, nervous system specialists helping families discover the missing link in their wellness journey.
Join us as we translate complex health challenges into simple, actionable solutions for you and your children.
Because your family deserves to thrive,
not just survive.
Okay, let's set the scene. We've talked about in previous episodes how our nervous system can get stuck in this fight, flight, or freeze. And so I have a story of a friend I know who experienced 3 really big traumas back to back. So something really stressful 1 week, was taking time to process, and then before she got through processing, another traumatic event, and then yet again another traumatic event the following week. And pretty quickly after that, she didn't realize it at the time, but pretty quickly after that, these autoimmune issues started to build up, and now possibly full-blown mast cell activation syndrome, gut issues, SIBO, chronic pain, you name it. And I see her, this poor girl, chasing all of these autoimmune symptoms and wanting to hold her and say, hey, what is the root of all of this? And when did it start? And is it rooted in your nervous system being deeply disrupted all at once from this one big T, right? And thankfully, she's started to go down a more holistic route. But even with functional medicine, I worry, like, her alarm system's sounding right. And even with this functional medicine, are we just kind of putting our hands over the alarm system so it's quieter? That's what I worry about. As someone who also practices functional medicine, but always starts with assessing the nervous system. So that's the kind of scene set.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I know in that story, you had said something along the lines of like the alarm system starts going off. And I feel like I just want to almost like deconstruct what that means for the person who's listening in terms of like what the alarm system is and why that's even important, because you know it's fun to make these like complex conversations and turn them into the simplified version, but I want you to kind of understand like the deeper layers of that. And so when we talk about the alarm system, we really talk about the nervous system in like 2 different fashions, right? We've got like our stress responses, and then we've got our rest responses. Now, I'm still trying to figure out a way to say that, because actually they don't actually turn all stress and all rest, right? They actually work together. But just for simplification's sake, we will talk about that maybe on a different day. We have a stress response and a rest response, and they can't turn on at the same time, right? If you are, like our dear friend you were just talking about, if you are going through these traumatic events, your stress response is on and your rest response is quieted, and vice versa. Once you're in a restful state, your rest response turns on and your stress response turns down. And so what that looks like from an anatomy's perspective, we've got the cortex, which is I like to call like the mom of the brain. It's like she's coordinating everything and she's telling everybody what to do and where to go. But then you've got a primitive brain, which I like to call the dad of the brain, and he is like the protector. He is someone that's going to step in when he needs to. And we have both of these things that kind of help keep us safe, but then also help keep us organized and restful. Now, in that story you were just saying, your friend experienced trauma after trauma after trauma, and therefore the primitive brain, or the dad of the brain, right, is now like full steam ahead. He's got his hypervigilance on, right? We are aware, we are trying to protect the body. We don't want any more stress to take place, because the body also knows like there's only so much threshold we can handle. And so it takes over, and that's where usually it's like emotional, it's striving, it's just full-blown like fight mode on everything, or flight mode. It depends on what your, trigger response is, and we'll kind of talk about that in a second. But all of that to say, when the cortex is overwhelmed, it passes it to the dad to then protect the body. Okay, that's the primitive brain, the limbic response, right? And then the stress response gets triggered by perception, not necessarily real danger, right? So now sometimes the trauma that probably your friend is going through isn't actually what's continuing. It's the perception of that stress, right? It's then it's not.
No, it's over, and she wants to have moved on from that because it was over a year ago. But I mean, the body keeps score, right? So her body, like, dad took over and he's still on the lookout for stress. And so now everything that is coming her way for perception is being considered stressful. right?
Yes. Okay, I thought you were disagreeing. I was like, wait, stop me if I'm wrong. But
No,
because I don't know the whole details of the story, but it's cool when you know their nervous system, you can really actually do know the details of the story, right? It's like,
yeah.
it's very obvious that while even though the trauma has been sometimes even taken out of the picture, sometimes it stays, but sometimes taken out of the picture, we have this like protective mode that just kind of blinds us. And that's what we're talking about with the alarm system. It's like, we don't care. It doesn't even have to make sense, right? Logically, our brain stopped working, right? That's the mom brain, right? Logic in reason, in organization, in order, in rest. That's all the mom brain or the cortex. But the dad brain is all about protection, and you can't be in both at the same time. And so that's when we talk about when it comes to that, like that stress response.
Yeah. And another thing to point out is a lot of people think like, well, this is just like my aunt has autoimmune issues, my grandma has autoimmune issues, my mom has autoimmune issues. And so this is just in my genetics, and I was just bound to get this. And I think we're going to hit on this in another episode just because we can talk about so much. But there is a foundation of what we're given genetically. And then there's this whole topic of epigenetics, which is what influences how our genes express. And so I think both of us want to stress to the people we're serving, like, you are not dealt a bad hand and that's solidified and done, and that's going to be your life, right? We can impact how your body perceives its environment and expresses itself to its full potential.
Yeah. I love that because we have so many times where it's like, I for some reason I'm seeing a lot of like emotional type of stressors and traumas and like expressions. So like anxiety, depression, yeah, all those things. And it's like, yeah, I'm just anxious. That's just how I've always been. And then we start talking. It's like, oh yeah, my mom was anxious, and actually my grandma was anxious. And from that conversation, it sounds like, oh, it just runs in the family. But really, it's like you share your mom's nervous system for a time, right? Everyone does.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, what environment was she in? What environment was your grandma in, right? And oftentimes we stay, as like generationally, we stay in the same environments that are triggering our genetic expression, thinking that that's just how it has to be. When this kind of care actually gives you, I always like to say, once you start care, you get a choice, right? I get to kind of show you what's been going on, what the nervous system is saying, what your brain is truly feeling. And then you get to choose after that what you do with that information. But I know my job will be done when your brain and body are talking a lot better.
Yeah. And there's also a whole other conversation of when we grow up watching dysfunction, we mimic that, we mirror that, because that's the only thing we know. So if you're constantly watching your mom and your grandma respond to their environment with anxiousness, that's a learned behavior. Anyway, I don't want to discredit anxiousness or anything like that, but we also have to give credit where credit's due. And I want to empower people. Like, you are more than your genetics and what your mother and father, like, their behavior, right? There's more to you, and you can express to a way higher potential.
Yeah. That's where like the hope comes from. And like Serena said, anxiety is needed, right? Like we need a certain level of anxiousness. It's actually a great protective mechanism, right? We need that. And I think sometimes we are unaware of the choices that we have. And so I think that kind of segues into like our next kind of conversation, where we want to also bring up what medications do to the nervous system when it comes to these genetic expressions, right? Whether it's anxiety, whether it's ADHD, whether it's autoimmune conditions, right? There's lots, like kind of like what Dr. Serena was hinting at before. It's like there's functional medicine approaches and there's medicalized approaches. At the end of the day, we're not necessarily addressing the root cause of that. And the root cause is without a doubt found in the nervous system.
So with that said, where do you feel that medications or supplementation comes into play? And I know that we both think, okay, sometimes we have to get out of the storm. And if you are not even functioning because you're so anxious and medications are impacting you, okay. But what do you feel like medications are doing for the nervous system, if anything?
Yeah. So I kind of, I'm going to start by saying this and see where it goes next, because I think it's really funny how when someone starts with care and eventually we get to like the wellness side of it, it's like I have to keep coming forever. However, when we talk about medications, or maybe when we don't talk about medications, we don't necessarily talk about an end date, right? We don't talk about like, okay, we're getting on this medication until it's just kind of like, okay, this is the medication you're given. And then it's just like till further notice, right? And so I agree with you, Dr. Sheena, that it is very important to understand that we are not saying that you don't ever need medications. I know that there has been misconceptions about, and maybe some people who don't believe that, right? But we are in the boat of function, right? So if you are not functioning, then and the medication is going to help you do that, that is great. And we don't want to necessarily say that's the only thing we want you to add into your routine, because it's not going to deal with the root cause of the matter. And so what medications do, which is again why I'm saying like they are needed sometimes, is suppress the symptoms. Right? If you are not functioning, then we do maybe need to suppress those symptoms either through medications or through natural remedies like supplements and, different routines. I would even actually say like habits sometimes. And, like I'm a mindset coach, and sometimes we can get very into our routines and not necessarily addressing why we need so much structure and rigidity and all of these things. So I think anything is a drug, right? Anything that you use to cope and feel better is a drug. And the thing about this care is that we are giving you then the choice to either continue using that drug or discontinue it, no matter what that looks like, right? So that drug, quote unquote, is what's suppressing or turning down the alarm system. It's essentially telling like the dad of the brain. Remember, we're talking about mom versus dad. Dad is the protective mode. We're telling dad, everything's fine. You are fine. You don't need to be this like hypervigilant. You don't need to be on protective mode. We're just going to kind of quiet you because we don't want to deal with you. And we're going to try and like then alter the brain's perception of the body, right? So the brain is kind of delegating and coordinating and everything. The primitive brain is protecting. We shut that off, but then we also, you can't just shut off one without the other with medications or supplements, right? We're also shutting down the cortex. So then our expression of life decreases overall, because now you've got the protective brain is shut down, right? But then also so is your organizational brain, because it's not getting the correct signals from the environment, right? So now we've got mom and dad who are both confused. And I don't know about you, but when your parents are confused, the kids don't necessarily come out the best, right?
Yeah.
Speaking from experience in my own family, right? A lot of dysfunction that I grew up with. All of that to say, now we're like going down a tangent, but all of that to say, medications come in and they are needed for a certain amount of time. However, we also want clarity for our brain to understand what is going on. And that's why chiropractic care can step in and give the body the correct signals of what's going on inside of it, so that it can then do what it's best at, which is healing from the inside out because of the God-given design that it has.
Yeah, one thing I want to emphasize about what you said is medications are not inherently evil, but what breaks my heart is to see it dampen someone's expression of life. I feel like that is a perfect analogy of what I can see in my office. And people don't know that they're in charge. Like, I cannot tell you, and I will not tell you, it's out of my scope to get off of the medication. But I don't think people understand that just because your doctor put you on a medication doesn't mean that if you're ready to get off of that, you can challenge that. Ask them, like, hey, what's the timeline? What do I need to do to get off of this? Can you help me do that, prescribing doctor? And so in part, it's my job to empower the patient that if you don't want on this medication, like sometimes medications are life-saving, right? But if you don't want on this medication and you don't feel like you need it anymore, it's in your power to get off of that. But set yourself up for success. What are you going to do to change your habits and your routines and your nervous system perception of stress so that you are equipped to get off medication if that is what you would like to do?
Yeah. I talk about that all the time in my office too. You get the choice. Once you have the tools that you've been missing, you now have choices.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll throw it back to you, Dr. Serena. When it comes to the actual adjustments, so we can talk about chiropractic and like what that looks like all day long and the science behind it. But when it comes to like, okay, I am a mom, I'm bringing my kiddo in who is either on, we'll just say who is on ADHD medication, right? It's like we tried all the things. We found out that in order for this child to sit down and follow what the teachers are needing him to do at school, he needs this medication. But now in my mom gut, I just kind of know that that's not the best thing for him, because I've also seen his expression of life, right? And they might not say it this way, but right, I've seen him be more tired. I've seen him be more lethargic. I've seen almost like the spirit within him just like kind of dim. And I don't love this medication, but I don't know what to do next. How is this going to help said mom?
Yeah, very simply, research that Heidi Havik is doing, which I think I'm going to just cite her all the time because she's doing amazing research, is that chiropractic is taking that messy cortex, our logical brain, the mom part of our brain, and when we are removing subluxation, so chiropractic subluxation, which is dis-ease within the system, with a specific chiropractic adjustment, we are lighting up the cortex by 20%. And if we're lighting up the cortex by 20%, we are down regulating the dad brain, the amygdala, by 20%. So we're shifting to allow the brain for this hierarchical thinking and organization, administrative work, that type of thing. And to clarify, this isn't what separates chiropractic from other manipulations that other providers might be doing, is that the research showed that this did not work if you just manipulated the spine. You had to be actively removing a subluxation very specifically, which is huge, right? You can't just go walk on your kid's back and give them big hugs and hope for the best. It's very specific, which is why you need a nervous system focused chiropractor to do this work.
Yeah. Can I also add that, like, I don't know, we know how big of a deal 20% is, but I also want to address that, like, you know, from the, I guess, percent scale that most people know, it's like 20%, what, yeah, big look. And that's why you can get one very specific adjustment and it's going to activate it 20% and downregulate 20%, but you need multiple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I think a lot of people are like afraid of. It's like, why is this chiropractor trying to sell me all these adjustments, right? It's because, in a way, you're right. 20% isn't going to change your life, right? Right away. It's the continual application of said 20%, right? Turning on, down regulating over a period of time, a very structured, you know, intentional period of time, series of adjustments that are going to then give your brain what it needs to then turn that into more than 20%, right? Like that change is just with one adjustment. So that's huge, right? Like 20% with one adjustment is ginormous. But if you come to my office and you're like, I just want to do this once a week, 20% is not going to override the other 80% that you're, and I should even say that's 20% in that moment, right? That's just in one moment of time. You are living your life day to day to day, 24/7, right? And so if I'm only able to influence it for 20% in one moment, it's just not going to get you the results like a care plan where you're coming in every day or multiple times a day or at least 3 to 4 times a week for not just like a month or two, for like 3 to 5 months, right? That's when the brain is going to say, oh, this is how I've always wanted to function. Now it's going to get on board, and that's where the internal healing happens. It's not us that does it, right? It's the body takes it. But it's, again, we're going back to choices, right? Giving the brain a choice on, okay, now that I know how to function optimally and I like this feeling, I'm going to keep doing it as long as I keep getting the signal from said chiropractor to support me along the way to get out of this like storm or whatever it is that you're in.
Yeah, these people in the storm, they need momentum. They need to build momentum to get out of the storm. Yeah, I had one patient recently, and I wasn't aware of the amount of emotional turmoil that she was in her job. And so I didn't give her a robust enough care plan, frankly. And she just wasn't getting better. And I was like, this is just does not typically happen in my office where someone's HRV is actually dropping. And then come to find out her job was getting more stressful, more toxic, more just emotionally draining. And when subsequent scans were showing that she was getting worse, like she was changing and adapting, but like big picture not improving the way she should have been, or the way I normally see, is when it came out how she's like, I think the stress is getting to me more than I thought. And we did a scan right when she quit her job, like the week that she quit her job. And then we just did a scan this week of 6 weeks out from not having that job. And her HRV improved massively, and her body's organizational pattern, like, perfect. Dr. Veronica, I don't know how much chiropractic can override someone's nervous system when they're in the storm, like in the trauma. Right? That's kind of out of our scope of like that's when we have other providers to help us with these emotional aspects as well. Because I can help you and I can help you not get worse, but to what extent can chiropractic override consistent bombardment of traumas, thoughts, and toxins? I don't know.
Well, I think it can.
Yeah.
I think it can, but we're talking like 2, 3, 4 adjustments a day.
Yeah, and is that
right?
even
Like if you are,
Yeah.
if you're right, that's, I mean, who can do that? I don't even know if I can
Yeah.
do that, right? So it's like understanding that, and I will say there's also limitations in matter, right? The body can only adapt so much to the circumstances in the, you know, the statutes of limitation, right? There's only so much that the body can overcome on its own after it's crossed this threshold of dysregulation. I like how you said, you know, there's this like, when we say the storm, it's not because there's one raindrop happening, right? Or even like a couple of things happening. It's usually like we have to get you out of this momentum because there was momentum working against you for so long. Now we're going to try and make the momentum work for you. And there is a limitation of where we can go when you have the stressors of life, right? When you have toxins in your environment, when you have, you know, this now genetic expression that may or may not be able to get turned down, right? Or quieted, right?
Yeah.
So I tread thin ice on that because it's like, I don't want you to think that miracles cannot take place. I'm literally wearing my Expect Miracles shirt today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to give you realistic expectations on this journey of how far we can get you without other support involved, right? Without the therapist, without quitting your job if you need to, right? I have a mom who's getting ready to homeschool, right? She was like, I knew that public school wasn't great for my family. Now we're like regulated all the time. And that, like, there's just a brink that they haven't gotten to because of how stressful public school has been for their family, right? In that case, I can adjust you and maintain you where you're at. But if you want to get to that next level, that's kind of up to you on what you decide with that information.
Yeah, that is exactly what I tell my patients, especially patients who have been under wellness for a long time. And then something happens in their life and we do scans and it shows up on their scans like, hey, what's going on? Like, well, I've had a lot of stress. Like, okay, I didn't put a care plan together for you after these scans. Let's chat about this. What are your health goals? I can keep you here at your current frequency of how you're coming to see me. But if your health goals are to express life to its fullest, like, because your sleep is probably not great right now. And they're like, nope. I was like, your digestion is probably not great right now. They're like, nope. You're probably pretty anxious right now. Like, look at this. They're like, yeah, I am. So, like, okay, we can keep you here and I can maintain this. But depending on your goals and what you would like, we can also get you out of this. And so putting it in their hands, right? And then listeners, like, your health is in your hands and it's our job to give you your options, essentially. Right? Yes, if you want to take medications, all the power to you. If you don't want to take medications, I am right there with you. I would fight and claw my way out of all medications personally with any other modality because I just, that's just who I am and I don't want that, but that's not everyone. And so I would empower my patients. And for those of you listening who aren't patients of nervous system focused chiropractic, if your gut is telling you, I don't want this, I want to express my life and I want to get out of this storm, then keep listening. Dig into what chiropractic has to offer on a deeper level because it's more than pain. It's more than moving better. It's expressing life better, which is amazing.
Mic drop. I think that's a great way to end this episode. I love it.
All right, on our next episode, we are going to dive into neurofeedback, EMDR, and other healing modalities. And so if this was interesting to you, this is just the first layer, and we are ready to dive deeper into what chiropractic has to offer versus these other modalities, which are amazing, but where they can come into play.
Perfect. Well, we are going to end with our closing prayer. So whoever wants to join us can do that. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time today. Thank you for just the opportunity that we get to have choices, right? You are a God of choice. You have given us choice from the very beginning, but you've also given us opportunities to seek you and guide you and know you. And I believe that is something that we are helping people do more of with this care, right? We are helping people release the things that are stopping them from perceiving you and your goodness and suppressing who exactly you called them to be. And so we are just so glad that we get to be the hands and feet of you, Jesus, and help people really see themselves themselves the way that you see them. And God, I pray that whoever's listening to this episode feels empowered and loved and known and does what they need to do to fully step into that full expression of life that we talk so often about on this episode. We love you. We honor you. We praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us on Motherhood, Aligned and Assigned.
We hope today's episode helped you connect the dots in your family's health journey.
Remember, this is where nervous system health meets motherhood wisdom.
Until next time, we're Dr. Veronica Schiltz
and Dr. Serena Kaufman, supporting you as you nurture your family's well-being.
Because when you're aligned, everyone thrives.